college football's in big trouble. The Big Ten's met. The Pac-12's met. You know, from the very beginning, I've said, I think the SEC will keep their head down and bulldoze through it. I still believe that this morning. The SEC will work. It matters more. That's their slogan. That's their marketing campaign. It matters more. I've been down there. I've gone to SEC games. I still believe they're going to power through it. I do not believe that's the case. I think the rest of college football probably gets canceled. And I think there's two reasons for it. I've been banging this drum for a long time. It's 2020. College football makes over $2 billion a year just on television revenue. And they don't have a cohesive plan because they don't have a president. They don't have a CEO. How is it possible that you make over $2 billion annually as a business and you don't have a president or a CEO? Mark Emmert, you can go to volleyball matches. Hire somebody to take care of football. What we are seeing from the White House to states to tiny towns to sports, leadership matters. There is no centralized voice with football. How could there be in college football? There's nobody to run it. It's every man for themselves. If you want to know how much leadership matters in this crisis, look at the NBA. Good God. Unlike every other sport, COVID hit them in the middle of a season. David Stern and Kobe Bryant both suddenly died. China pulled out of a $2 billion deal with the NBA because of something a GM for the Rockets, Houston Rockets, posted. You had a massive social movement in America where LeBron James was front and center. All of these were challenges, perhaps. And yet I watch the NBA and I'm like, damn, looks good, players into it. Energy's amazing. Aesthetics are great. No positive tests. Oh, Lou Williams had some fun in Atlanta. But in the end, that's what leadership looks like. College football's 5 power conferences, all fighting over revenue, fighting over bowl games, every conference for themselves. It's just, I don't understand it. I grew up in my sports career in Vegas. It's a big boxing city. And so when I was like in my 20s, I'm a young sportscaster, boxing was everything. There was no such thing as UFC. But the problem with boxing was always they didn't have a CEO. It was Don King. It was Bob Arum. It was these promoters getting rich. And then little UFC with Dana White came up. They had a president. They had a centralized voice. He was a tough guy, street guy. And they just rose right over boxing. Was it better than boxing? I don't know. But they had a leader. College football doesn't have one. It's unthinkable. It's 2020. Fox alone pays the sport $500 million. You can't pay $1 million to get somebody smart to, keep their eye on the till. Here's the second issue. Again, it's money. The NFL or the NBA owners can write a check. NBA spending $150 million on the bubble. NFL owners can all write a check for $20 million per team and have protocols and daily testing and safety measures for trainers and players and coaches and secretaries and interns, and colleges can't do that. Everybody always talks about how much money colleges make. Yeah, Ohio State does. Oregon State doesn't. There's 130 college football programs. There's about 12 where they're just rolling in lettuce. And there's about 100 that are Purdue, Western Kentucky. There's a lot of them don't make a lot of money, and they can't just write $25 million checks because, remember, college football stadiums are often bigger than pro stadiums. Why? Because college football needs people in the stands. They make huge ticket revenue. That's why little Auburn's a little tiny town in Alabama. They can have an 85,000-seat football stadium. Yet in Philadelphia, a big city, probably 10,000 less than that. College football needs fans. They need ticket revenue. They don't have it. They got to pay for all those sports, men's and women's, and almost all lose money except football on Saturday. So I think it's great that players came out yesterday, star players in college football, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence with "We Are United." But good God, that feels like grabbing a small bucket as the Titanic sinks. It is way too little and way too late. Folks, leadership has mattered. They do studies on this, why kids are generally more successful, little boys and little girls, if both parents are around. And I have watched during this crisis great leadership from some governors, great leadership from mayors of cities, great leadership from some of the commissioners. College football has a massive hole. College athletics has long been a house of cards. I'm not saying it's designed to make money, but it's sure as hell not designed to hemorrhage it. But it is time to start over. It is time to hire somebody to galvanize my favorite sport. I really love college football, but right now it is a circus, and the doors are closed to the tent, and I don't think it's coming back for a long time. I'm crossing my fingers on the best run conference, by the way, arguably the best run conference, the SEC. I'm crossing my fingers they'll survive it. Doug Gottlieb joining me now, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. So let's talk about it. I mean, it looks like college football's in dire straits, Duggar. So what do you think it's all about?
I think it's all about liability. And, I was talking, Colin, to a couple of athletic department members from the Big 12, and they said that there's some evidence, I don't know if it's empirical or anecdotal, that, we all look at deaths and hospitalization, but what we can't necessarily quantify is the lasting effects of COVID on an athlete. And there is some evidence that people have had COVID, especially guys that are bigger and guys that are a little bit overweight. There's some lasting heart issues or lung issues. And I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to, look, kids can get sick at home and you can't sue a university. But if you get sick playing college football and one person has, God forbid anybody dies, even if they don't die, it's the lasting effects becomes not just a lawsuit, but potentially a class action lawsuit because you had this information, you put people in harm's way. I believe the players want to play. I believe you're safer on campus, and I can explain why in a moment. But I think the reason that you're seeing the Big Ten is because the Big Ten was the first one to have this evidence, and they've shared it with some of their conference brethren.
Yeah, I mean, you were a college athlete. I was just saying I'd rather my daughter go back to college and room with volleyball players than non-athletes because I don't think either is perfect. I just think athletes are less imperfect. I do think there's daily testing or weekly testing, and that would make me feel as a parent a little safer. You played college sports. Do you think, being at Ohio State or Wisconsin or, Ole Miss is safer than being home?
Well, it depends. Okay. And this goes for pro athletes as well. If you're going to stay home and quarantine for the entire year, okay, and quarantining is not isolating. Okay, quarantining is meaning social distancing, 6 feet away. If you're going to wear a covering, if you're not going to go to large gatherings, you're going to go and space from people when you go to the grocery store, but not sit inside at restaurants. If you're going to do all these things, not have play dates for your kids, not go to large gatherings. If you're going to do all these things all year long, well, then you're safer. The problem is that the rest of the world is opened up. And even when it's not opened up, people are going to other people's houses, which completely defeats the purpose of quarantining. And so for a pro athlete, definitely. For a college athlete, definitely. You're safer with your team where at least there's some form of control over your environment. There is testing. Obviously, pro testing is going to be daily. It's going to be a percentage of kids in college. But there's also this. When you're on campus, there's a personal self-discipline it takes to be a college athlete, to be a professional athlete. When you're on campus, if you think about breaking out of your bubble and breaking your protocols, much like baseball now or basketball with the tip line, at least the coach, the other players, the position coach have some sort of oversight and be like, yo, dude, if you go out to that party, this could ruin all of our seasons. If you stay home, you would be the first college student in the history of the world to want to stay home with your parents on a Friday and Saturday night if you decide to not go to college this year.
Yeah.
So I understand that in theory, being at home in your own personal bubble in quarantine is safer than playing college football or college basketball or the NFL. The reality is you're actually safer when you're tested, when you're monitored, when you're in some form of bubble, and you have the oversight of a head coach, of a position coach, and your fellow teammates if you're on a college campus.
Yeah, there is peer pressure when you're on a college campus. You don't want to let down your college teammates. There's peer pressure. I think that helps. Okay.